Hello and welcome to another episode of Full Court Finance here at Zacks. I'm your host, Ben Rains, and today we're talking some coffee wars from Starbucks to some Upstarts, and I'm joined by my colleague, Madeleine Johnson, who runs our income investor trading service, to discuss something that's right up her alley as an avid coffee drinker. So welcome, Maddie.
Hi, Ben. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And before we get into anything, though, I just want to say, remember, if you have any questions or episode suggestions, please feel free to shoot us an email over at podcasts@zacks.com. Also, make sure to subscribe and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. So as I said, welcome. Hello. Good to have you here.
Hello. Happy Monday.
Yeah, happy Monday. I feel like I haven't had you on this show in like a year or something like that, for a long time. But yeah, good to have you back. So I quickly just want to run down, since this is a show where we're talking about publicly traded companies, just to give people a sense of some of the companies we're going to be talking about today.
Sure.
So obviously Starbucks, maybe the most commonly known publicly traded coffee company.
We have one in our office.
Yeah.
Well, not like in the Zacks office, which would be phenomenal, but it's downstairs in our office building.
So that trades under the ticker SBUX. For anyone listening who didn't know that, it's currently a Zacks number 2 rank by stock. Their stock's up 150% over the last 5 years, up 50% in 2019, which is killing its broader market. And then we also have McDonald's, which is a place where a lot of people drink their coffee. That's trading under the ticker MCD. And it's also a number 2 buy right now. It's up similarly to Starbucks over the last 5 years, up almost 140% and 28% so far this year. And then we have Dunkin, which is officially now just Dunkin. It's not Dunkin' Donuts anymore. They're trying to they're going to be a broader, they're not just a donut shop. And they're trading under the ticker DNKN. And it's also a number 2 ranked stock right now, so good for all the coffee companies. And they're up 87% over the last 5 years, so lagging behind those 2 bigger companies, but then also like McDonald's up around 25% in 2019. So those are the big 3 that most people here in the United States would know about. And then we also have Nestle, which trades under the ticker NSRGY. It's an ADR here. And then we have Smucker, which SMJ, they own Folgers, and they have some other deals to distribute, such as Dunkin' Donuts. They're distributing their K-Cups at grocery stores and all that kind of stuff. So those are the big 5 companies that are publicly traded here in the States that we're going to talk about, and we're obviously going to talk about a lot more. But I just want to get those out of the way to give people a sense of what coffee companies they could invest in, just that they might not know about. So why don't we go into what we think are maybe the ones that are doing the best at the moment. We've obviously mentioned how they've done so far in 2019, but what do you think Starbucks and Dunkin' and McDonald's have done to kind of have this little bit of a comeback in 2019?
Well, so I feel like I need to disclose that I drink a lot of coffee. I love coffee. I drink it every morning. It's part of my morning routine. Get up. I have a K-cup. Like, I have a K Keurig machine. Brew myself a little 10-ounce cup while I get ready. And then what is not great for my wallet is that I also buy coffee on my way into work. That has become like, I don't know how I got myself into this. Like, it is now like a routine. Now it's also part of my morning routine of buying coffee every morning. Has started a few months ago. I don't know how I don't know how it happened. It just happened. Like this morning, I bought myself a medium latte, had to get an extra shot of espresso. That's an extra like 60 cents. It didn't need to happen. I could have waited until this afternoon or not at all today, but that's an extra $5. However, I don't know, but I love coffee. And the one company that I do think is doing things right now is Starbucks. And I think what has helped the company turn things around is the new CEO, Kevin Johnson. Past CEO, current chairman, Howard Schultz, really focused on kind of like the big picture, the big idea, those reserve roastery stores, which I think we're still getting one on Michigan Avenue here in Chicago. You know, the Crate and Barrel, the old Crate and Barrel store?
Yeah.
That's going to be a huge flagship 10-story. No, it's not 10 stories. It's like a 6-story store. That's going to eventually be a huge Starbucks. I'm excited. I will be there like opening weekend, waiting in line to get whatever drink. But that's what like Howard Schultz was all about, was like expanding.
Yeah.
But then you have a Starbucks in every corner. It doesn't like, it kind of like oversaturated the coffee market. Growth slowed. It wasn't special anymore, right? So then he had to like come up with new ideas, this type of experience store. And Kevin Johnson came into the role, and what he is focused on is the numbers, getting people into the stores. And they don't have to stay in the store necessarily. They don't have to stay in Starbucks and read a book all day.
Yeah.
They can get into the store, get out of the store, whether that's through delivery, whether that's through mobile order and pay. And it's working.
Yeah.
The
rewards program.
The rewards program is like growing double digits continually quarter over quarter, at least for the last few quarters. And this past quarter was a blowout quarter.
Yeah, so I have those stats right here. So they posted better than expected earnings, raised their 2019 outlook. This is on July 25th. So comparable store sales globally were up 6%, led by 7% comps growth in the U.S. and 6% comps growth in China, which is pretty insane for a company that's been around so long.
And I feel like in last year they were struggling to gain net positive growth in China.
Yeah.
So I mean, this turnaround is crazy.
Yeah, and so as you mentioned, they're doing delivery. They're working on a big nationwide rollout here in the United States with Uber Eats, mobile ordering. If you go into a Starbucks, you'll see they have their own just dedicated station to where they're just churning out coffees
and granted,
for mobile orders.
Sometimes you have to wait.
Yes,
still,
yes,
it gets busy in the morning, like all coffee shops do. But it's working. The strategies they have in place right now, it's working. There's still a few kinks they have to work out, like every huge growth company. Well, what's funny is that Starbucks was a growth company, turned into a stagnant growth company, turning into a growth company again, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
All thanks to this new CEO putting into these numbers first focused strategies. And I guess I don't want to diminish what Howard Schultz has done for the company.
Oh, yeah,
Howard Schultz made Starbucks what it is today. I mean,
yeah, for sure.
But it just needed a little boost, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah. So just for quick reference, because you realize how big of a brand Starbucks is. Everyone knows Starbucks, even if you don't like Starbucks or frequent Starbucks. Some stats here. So the first Starbucks, and I guess I didn't even realize it was this old, even though it makes sense. The first Starbucks was started in 1971. For some reason, I thought it was the early 80s. But and then Schultz, as you mentioned, Howard Schultz joined as the director of retail operations and marketing in 1982. And so they went from 84 stores in 1990 to 425 by 94 to 1,000 by 96. They opened their first store outside of North America, in Japan, and Singapore. Then they have 3,500 by 2,000. So still relatively small.
Yeah.
Today, they have over 30,000 stores. So, I mean, from 2000 to 2019, they went from 3,500 to 30,600 roughly.
Yeah.
That's just insane.
I mean, and Starbucks is able to operate in Milan, in Italy, where where the coffee culture is very serious. I mean, they take even in London. I mean, it's very small across Europe comparatively to what we have here in the U.S. But that's how big and how powerful that brand is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that makes total sense, and they're doing as much as they can to grow. But I quickly want to then touch on a little bit of what Dunkin and McDonald's did in the most recent quarters to give people a sense of how Starbucks is sort of after that massive comps growth quarter this past quarter. Dunkin also beat their estimates recently, upped their long-term view. Their U.S. comparable store sales were up 1.7%, which is solid, not the 6%
sure.
that Starbucks did. Then they also announced a partnership over, not this last quarter, but in June, with Grubhub. They're going to expand. They're going to roll out delivery throughout the United States. So you'll hear delivery. Everyone's doing it. Everyone, Kroger, Walmart, Target, everyone has to do it. They're also now testing out some Beyond Meat breakfast sandwiches in Manhattan right now.
I heard that.
Go try Beyond Meat. It's just give it a try. Just so you can speak about it to other people. I've tried it. It's interesting to say the least. And then McDonald's, they actually fell a little bit short of earnings most recently, but then beat on the top line. And they are also expanding their partnership with Uber Eats. So this comes down to the question of, do you think people want their coffee delivered? Are people going to pay to have coffee delivered when it's something that either you want hot, or if you're getting iced coffee, you want it to still have ice in it by the time you get it? So how often are people going to be really ordering coffee delivery? That's my question to you.
I think with any delivery partnership, there has to be a time frame in which it's promised, right?
Yeah.
Because if it's going to take a delivery driver 30 minutes to get my iced grande cold brew to me in, let's say I live in Houston, and it's 99 degrees outside plus 90% humidity. Granted, I don't know if they're in a car or on a bike. I don't know. I don't want it to be, I just don't want one ice cube floating in it by the time it gets to me.
Exactly, yeah.
So, but I do think part of that partnership was a guaranteed time limit or a guaranteed time frame in which the drink will get to me cold or hot. So it depends. I mean, I personally have, I guess, requested Starbucks delivery once through Postmates, and that was because I was very lazy and didn't want to walk to get my Starbucks.
Fair enough, yeah, right.
But I usually, because we live here in Chicago and there is a Starbucks so close to us, really wherever we are, that it's very easy to get to quench our thirst, so to speak.
Yeah.
However, if I wasn't in a city like Chicago, if I'm in a more rural area and I know that maybe a Starbucks is 20 minutes away or more, I mean, and I really, really, really wanted that iced white chocolate frappuccino, well, maybe delivery sounds a little bit more appealing.
Yeah, and I think we'll see how big of a portion of their business it will be going forward, because as you said, anyone who lives in a city knows that there is a Starbucks within a 3-block radius of you, probably at any moment. So it seems maybe that their delivery business would be geared more towards, say, an office meeting. They're ordering 30 coffees at once or something like that.
If you have a huge meeting and you needed those I don't know, it's like a gallon container.
Yeah.
Plus food, bagels, whatever. That would be a great thing to have delivered.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to watch to see if this delivery business actually becomes something more than just kind of a talking point for shareholders and executives to say, hey, we're rolling out this delivery business. I know they talked about it a lot in China, that they partnered with an Alibaba subsidiary to expand their delivery in China. So as I said, it'll be interesting to see if this then maybe no one goes into a Starbucks anymore, because as we know around here, the one down in the lobby, it's now gotten rid of a lot of its seating. They've done that at a lot of Starbucks seating recently, where they just want to be a streamlined shop where people are waiting in line and then just getting out of there.
Just leave. It's not comfortable. Just go.
Yeah, I mean, it is, because as you mentioned at the top, that Starbucks had been seen as a place to get coffee, and then you'd kind of linger there for hours, and maybe you'd have another one, or you'd read a magazine or a book. But now they're they're just in and out. It's like a drive-through almost, but for people, because as we said, they've done that in a lot of. That's kind of their new store model is limited seating, more people just waiting in line and getting out of their shop as fast as possible. So. And with that mobile ordering, obviously, it seems like that's the new wave. Is just people are ordering it as they walk the 5 minutes there. Hopefully, it's there right when they get there, and then just walk out. They don't even have to talk to anyone. It's an
they can keep
world.
their AirPods in.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. So that'll be interesting to watch. And then also, what is helping to kind of make a transition to the broader coffee market in general is that coffee prices per pound are at a pretty low figure, so that's helping these businesses that are still selling their coffee for what some people would consider outrageous prices. I'm not saying it's totally outrageous, but when coffee is now currently at around, I'm looking at this now, it's under $1 per pound. As in 2011, it was at around $3 per pound. In 2014, it was at $2 per pound. So for it to be at around 90 cents per pound, that's really cheap. It's hurting a lot of these farmers in countries that aren't necessarily the most well off at the moment. So if we look at the biggest coffee producing countries in the world, it's Brazil at number one, and it's not really a competition. They're by far the biggest. And then it goes to Vietnam, Colombia, Indonesia, Ethiopia, and then the list kind of goes on from there. So it's interesting to see that this coffee, the price drop has a lot to do with they're producing more coffee than is needed at the moment. But then there's also, as you mentioned before we started the show, there's some currency fluctuations that's really hurting the price of coffee long term in these countries. So it'll be interesting to watch that if going forward this continues, if the price of coffee drops even more, are then consumers going to be demanding from Starbucks or McDonald's or some of these places like, hey, we know what you guys are buying the coffee for. Why are you still charging us so much money?
Yeah.
Because it's been on a decline for the last several years, just straight down. So and their prices are continuing to go up at Starbucks and all of these places. So I just wonder what, if anything, do you see any consumer backlash possibly, or people just like, you know what, I'm going to get my Starbucks no matter what. I don't really care what they're paying for it on the big international commodities market.
I'm not sure. I guess it depends on if like the price increases are that dramatic. You know, because I think the last time Starbucks increased their prices, I don't know, was it last year? Was it 2 years ago? It was like 10 cents or 20 cents. And it wasn't that big, like it wasn't that impactful for people to be like, no, like I'm not going to stop ordering my venti iced coffee every morning.
Yeah, and we know it has not stopped you because I'm still
doing it.
But it doesn't seem, and this is also a kind of a side note, which is why Dunkin and these places, and especially Starbucks, have these rewards programs, because they want you to feel brand loyal and keep coming back. Whereas you have Pete's today, sometimes you'll have Starbucks, sometimes you'll have Pret. You don't feel like you're loyal to a Starbucks or a company like that, which isn't necessarily a good thing for some of these businesses who are trying all of these. They're trying all of these things to get you to commit to just their brand.
No, I will say I have the Starbucks app on my phone, and I only usually have it loaded like with money. Only if I have like a gift card from the holidays, like from my parents, or like if for my birthday. Then I'll like put the money on there, like throw away the gift card, then I'll use it. Then I usually won't reload it, which is not obviously the intent whatsoever of the app. But I'm not 100% fully a coffee snob. but I'm very close to being one because I take my coffee seriously, and I really love the taste of it. I love the taste of espresso drinks. I love the taste of espresso, and you can tell, like Starbucks, Dunkin, McDonald's, Pete's even, they're like fast food. McDonald's literally is fast food, but like versions of coffee chains. You know, they're on the go, they're quick. Sometimes your drinks don't come out great.
Yeah.
So it kind of like turns you off. This is just me being honest as a consumer. And espresso burns very quickly. And you can tell immediately when you take a sip that the espresso is burnt. And the drink tastes off. There's something off about it, and it's gross. And you just want to, then sometimes you have to throw the whole drink away. That's $4 in the trash right there. You can complain about it. You can tell them to remake the drink, and then they look at you. They give you stink eye. There's a whole line waiting. You're just like, okay, well, fine. But you burned the espresso. So then you want to find like a new coffee chain to try out, and as you try out all of these different brands, all of these different chains, you tend to learn which ones make the best drinks and which ones tend to like not burn the espresso. Starbucks, they're busy all the time.
Yeah.
Not like they have new baristas foaming, or like steaming the milk, foaming the milk, doing the espresso drinks. They're probably going to burn the espresso. So like you tend to learn, like a lot of times at the Starbucks here, or like the Starbucks like in the Loop especially, I won't buy espresso drinks there because I know that I might get a burned espresso drink. So I'll just buy.
And when you're paying a lot of money,
yeah,
you don't want something that's not what you're paying for.
I see that as being a smart consumer.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I'll usually just buy a nice coffee, a cold brew, especially in the summer, or a drip coffee. And even that sometimes can like, I don't know. I usually have to like, because it's so strong at Starbucks, I'll usually have to like cut it with milk or cream.
Yeah.
Which is fine. That's how I take my black coffee anyways. But like I would say like, I don't want to call them like luxury coffee chains, but I'm going to for this purpose.
It works.
It works. Like at chains like Intelligentsia, La Colombe. I haven't been to Blue Bottle, but I'm going to classify them like Stumptown. Like they take their coffee very seriously. They'll spend like an extra minute making the drink. They don't burn the espresso, and that's what you want. And that's like, okay, I'll order the latte. But like I got a latte today at this Pete's. There wasn't a line. Like I am quite friendly with the baristas there. They know me. You know, you have to like trust the coffee making skills.
Exactly.
Sorry, it was a little bit of a rant.
No, that totally makes sense. And as someone who's drinking a different coffee every day, we appreciate your input, Maddie. But speaking of Pete's and some more of these, I don't want to call them upstarts because they're not necessarily new companies at all, but companies that aren't as popular in the United States, with the average consumer. Pete's is owned by, I believe they go by JAB, but you can say it's Jab Holdings.
Yeah, Jab.
It's a privately... So this is their quote, what they say they are: a privately held group focused on long-term investments in companies with premium brands, attractive growth, and strong cash flow. So they own Pete's Coffee, who also owns Intelligentsia and Stumptown.
Yes.
When I say own, they might not own all of it. They own a large majority of most of these companies. They own Panera, Einstein, Caribou, Pret, Krispy Kreme. All of these companies most people have probably heard of that just aren't on that Starbucks or McDonald's or Dunkin' Donuts level. And then there's also an upstart coffee company in China that recently went public, and that's Luckin Coffee. That trades under the ticker LK. They went public in May. I've obviously not had it before. I don't know anything about it, but
Yes.
they are competing with Starbucks in China. So it was a big deal that they went public, as Starbucks had what they would say struggled in China over the last year until recently with this turnaround in comps growth. So do you know anything about this Luckin brand more than just that they're now newly public?
Yeah, well, I don't necessarily know about like the specifics about the brand, but that what we were talking earlier about Starbucks is like new store format. So like they launched just like a specific I guess like seatless store in China called Starbucks Now, where it was like formatted specifically for delivery, mobile order, and pickup and like mobile orders in China in to compete with Luckin Coffee.
Okay.
And I won't be surprised if obviously like we kind of already have that because that format here now in the States, our Starbucks in the lobby, in our office lobby here it's kind of like that, but obviously still kind of catered to the people who don't mobile order and pay or for delivery. But I won't be surprised if that specific like delivery focused format kind of makes its way to the States sooner rather than later.
Yeah. And then another company that isn't an upstart by any means, but it might be a company that not many people in the States are super familiar with. And it's a company that Coca-Cola invested $5 billion in 2018, and they bought Costa Coffee, which is a UK based coffee chain, which you said you used to frequent all the time. So
yes, it's huge over over in the UK in London. I studied abroad in London back in my junior year in college. And I would argue that it was, I would say as big. I mean, Starbucks was pretty popular there only because like in London, it was like a eat in or take away situation where you could actually like, you could get coffee in mugs. Like that's like was bigger there. I mean, I think you can still do that here.
Yeah,
but
you can if you want to.
If you want to, but they're
no
like,
one does.
No one does.
Yeah.
But that was like if you wanted to eat in, you actually get your coffee in mugs. Costa is just like, I guess Starbucks is, I don't want to say number one competitor because I don't really have the stats to back that up, but it felt like Starbucks' number one competitor. But it also felt like Starbucks, like Costa was there first and then Starbucks obviously came in later. But it was great. Like it, you know, you had the baked goods, it had the good coffee. You could linger, you could sit, you could read, you could do your homework. I preferred it over to Starbucks just because it felt more authentic and British.
Yeah, not Americanized.
Not Americanized. Yeah.
But that's a move that Coke's making as people drink less and less soft drinks, soda, pop, whatever you want to call it. So they spent $5 billion on that. With Coke's backing, maybe you see Costa start booming more places that they have the distribution model to roll that out more. So that'll definitely be a company
over in the States,
that could maybe in the near future give Starbucks more of a run for its money. But I don't know exactly how many other companies at the moment could really challenge either Starbucks or Dunkin here in the States or McDonald's, just because they already just have too much scale. I mean,
I 100% agree.
Any of these upstart coffee places, I mean, they could theoretically become the next Starbucks. Starbucks started their growth very slowly, as we mentioned, but it doesn't seem like even a place like Intelligentsia, which actually started here in Chicago in the mid-90s, it's doing well, but I don't see it expanding on a massive level just because I don't think the company wants to be that. They don't have an intention to be the next company that's on every corner. Because at this point now, if you don't go to a Starbucks, it's kind of a cooler, you're a little more hip. At least that's what the thought would be why you're not going to Starbucks, because it's so easy to go to a Starbucks. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to look up on your phone map where is a Starbucks. You know where it is. It's walk in a circle for 2 minutes and you'll find one. So it's an interesting market, but it seems like we know who the giant players are for now, and that's not going to change. It could change in China. That Luckin brand could come in and give Starbucks a run for its money, but those big three companies here, and then obviously Nestle is another one, but that's more of an at-home coffee company.
Yes, it's more instant coffee.
Yeah.
So I don't want to sound Also, I feel like I keep sounding like a snob, but you know what? I'm just gonna go for it. So, they have in Europe, they have this, but I don't know if it's like strictly in Europe or also in like throughout South America and Latin America. Nescafe. It's like instant coffee plus cream and sugar. That is like huge. So when I was over there, when I was in Croatia recently, I in our one of our Airbnbs, we were like looking for like espresso beans or like just like make coffee before we like ventured out. And I was like, what is this? Like, I've never had this before. I was like, okay, let's give it a shot. And it was like fine. Like it was something that like I would never drink on my own. Like I wouldn't buy it. But like I also don't like sweet drinks. But it's like that is like almost like the house. That's like the Folger staple of Europe, it seems like. Is that type of like milk and sugar instant coffee cabinet staple.
Yeah, and for all these companies that do this, they have a market that's not going anywhere because coffee is the most commonly drank, that's not a proper English, the most commonly consumed beverage in the world aside from water. So they have a massive addressable market, and there's more new coffee drinkers every day.
Yeah, but what I find like the most interesting out of all of this is like everyone's coffee habits are so personal, and also, but like I don't know, it's like what am I trying to say? They're so, I don't know. It's so interesting to me. And I think that's why I also love drinking it, because I love learning about, you can learn so much about a culture by drinking coffee, you know? And everyone is like so picky about how they drink coffee, but I think that's really cool in a way, you know? Like, I know that I make fun of you for drinking our crappy office coffee, but that's totally fine. And I can drink like lots of different coffees, and that's totally fine. But the way that like people in Europe can just like sit down like the middle of the day and like have an espresso and smoke all the time. Whereas like we kind of do the same thing, maybe not smoke as much, but like have like that midday coffee break. It's still kind of the same thing, you know?
Yeah. A lot of coffee is consumed in offices and wherever at all times. And yeah, if people are picky, some people don't care. I mean, if I obviously don't love our relatively cheap coffee that I make in the morning and the afternoon here, but as you mentioned, it's just people are picky, so you go in and out of places all the time, and all these places are having to compete for your interest
but also,
in their
like,
coffee at all the
look
time.
at the different like milk options you can get with your coffee now. Like from obviously traditional dairy, like 2% whole milk skim, to almond, soy, oat milk. An oat milk latte is actually very good because it's like most like a traditional like latte with like dairy milk, to a matcha latte. And it's like there's so many of these variations that are coming out, and it's just like the industry is like changing so rapidly, that I just that I guess that's what I find it so interesting, is there's just so many new things to try. Yet I guess if you just want a regular cup of joe, you can still have a regular cup of joe, you know?
Yeah, and we could kind of just go on and on about this for forever, so I don't want to now just go down a ramble of where we're talking about coffee forever, because we could. I drink this Zacks brew. It's not actually made by us, but I drink that every day. But on the weekends, I'm a Starbucks loyalist. I'm not sure why, but I drink Starbucks.
That's fine.
I drink Starbucks iced coffee. I use my wife's rewards program. She's an avid Starbucks drinker. She drinks it during the week, but the mobile ordering in the rewards program does kind of, I don't want to say keep us tied to them, but it's effective for our purposes. I don't know exactly how often you get a free coffee or a free scone or whatever, but it seems to work for us. So it'll be fun to watch what a company like Starbucks, it seemed like they had, as you mentioned at the top, kind of plateaued with their growth. Eventually they can't open any more stores. It's not like they're going to all of a sudden have 50,000 stores 10 years from now. Where they get to open the next 20,000 stores. So they have to do something more to get this comps growth and return to growth. So if you look I'm looking at their 2-year price chart. They, over the last year, have just skyrocketed with, as Howard Schultz was transitioning out of his role, they were rolling out their delivery, their rewards program, their mobile ordering. So over the last 2 years, Starbucks has really shined in that last year in particular. So it'll be fun to watch to see if Starbucks is able to continue this massive run they've been on by really showing that the 3 core things they're doing have worked out going forward. So it'll also be Dunkin's challenge to keep up. And obviously, some people don't see them necessarily as direct competitors in the sense that Starbucks as a brand, you would say it as it's maybe a higher end brand, even though the price points aren't crazy different, but Starbucks is offering people more high end options where people who are going to Dunkin' Donuts are getting more of what you'd call a generic coffee.
Yes.
So, I don't know if Dunkin' will ever transition into where they're trying. I know they offer now frappuccinos and other drinks that aren't just black coffee in the morning, but
so the Starbucks in Gallagher Way, up in Wrigleyville here in Chicago, you can get like there's that Clover machine where you can get like a $8 cup of coffee.
Oh my God.
That's like the tall size or like the small size. But it takes it's like the extra steps it takes to make just like a good cup of coffee. It does, like, the beans are different, the brewing system is different. It actually, I did it once, like I used that method once at a different Starbucks. It tastes considerably different. I wouldn't say like better, because just like the brewing system is different. You can also get pour overs there, which is another like brewing method. But Starbucks, like you said, is, I think, offering more ways for consumers who are maybe looking for that intelligentsia experience at a Starbucks. So,
Yeah, and then as we wrap this up, there also is an interesting market of that Starbucks is growing its own stores, but Starbucks then, you also see their K-Cups and all of that. As you said, you're making K-Cups. As we mentioned at the top with Smucker, they don't own that. They've sold that to Nestle, so that's a big... They sold the rights to market Starbucks K-Cups in grocery stores. The deal was roughly $7.2 billion. So that's something where you see Starbucks in the grocery store and you think, oh, wow, Starbucks is everywhere. But they've actually decided that that's not their core business model to do this. We're going to be our brand in these stores. We're going to do this, but our brand is worth $7 billion to Nestle because it just has that cachet with people where if you did a blind taste test, I don't know if the average person who's drinking a Starbucks K-Cup and then the generic, say, Mariano's or Jewel K-Cup could tell you the difference.
Yeah.
Maybe they could, but there's a reason that they're charging you $2 more for it because it's Starbucks.
Yeah.
And even though you're making it at home and it's not in a branded Starbucks cup, you're pouring it into your own cup at home, you see that it's worth it to you. And that's why Starbucks is that brand that it is. It's why its stock prices continue to go up. It's why people are going there, because it's just that logo, that green logo. It's a
What is it? It's
a mermaid?
no
Something?
It's like a sea nymph,
Okay. Yeah.
which is different than a mermaid.
Yes.
Oddly, not oddly, but it's odd that I know that.
It's from, it goes with their Seattle roots in the Pacific Northwest where it rains all the time and people are all on their crab fishing boats or whatever. But that's what McDonald's and Dunkin maybe haven't been able to do. Is I don't know how many people are buying a McDonald's branded K-Cup. I don't even now I'm going on a tangent, but I know Dunkin has their own brands.
Dunkin has one. I don't. Actually, I think you can get McDonald's K-Cups. I think I've seen them at Jewel.
Yeah.
But quickly before we wrap up, I
Yeah.
do want to quickly disclose that I own Starbucks and McDonald's in the income investor portfolio.
Okay.
So just so full disclosure.
Oh yeah.
There.
For sure.
But yeah, they've been great performers since they've been added to the portfolio.
Yeah, good for people who are following your portfolio.
Yes, and then also just in general, those Starbucks shareholders this year, they've really it's been a great performer.
Yeah, and so to wrap it up of all that we've talked about, and as we mentioned, it's not necessarily, we don't know how big delivery will be as in terms of actual percentage of their revenue, but that is what McDonald's, Dunkin, and Starbucks are talking about for investors. They see this as a way to drive growth, or at least they see it as something that they have to do to meet consumer demand. It's not clear how many consumers are going to demand their coffee be delivered, but that's what they're trying to do. Starbucks is also continuing these, as you mentioned, these quick in and out stores, mobile ordering first. So we'll have to then watch to see what their next growth play is. But for now, Starbucks, McDonald's, and Dunkin are all doing very well. They've done really well in 2019. So I want to thank Maddie for coming on and talking coffee for the last hour.
We should do it again.
Half an hour or so.
Next year.
Yeah, right. Talk more coffee. We'll see. We'll be back in a year to see if they've completely changed their business models, gone back to no mobile ordering, no plastic cups, just you sit in their Starbucks for 5 hours. But I'm kidding. So that does it for this episode of Full Court Finance. Until next time, I'm your host, Ben Rains. And remember, if you have any questions or episode suggestions, please feel free to shoot us an email over at podcast@zacks.com. Also, once again, Maddie, thank you for coming on. We really appreciate it.